Welcome back, Stoner Squad, and welcome to all those new to the channel. My name is DanIsStoned, and thank you all for joining me today for another episode of Crusader Kings 3 Academy, the tutorial series for CK3. In today's episode, I shall cover all things military, and for simplicity's sake, and to make the guide as easy as humanly possible to follow, I have decided to organise this very video into 3 parts. First of all, we shall take a look at what armies are made of, in essence their composition. Then we shall take a look at the unit's individual stats and their attributes to finally analyse how battles are fought in CK3. So strap yourselves in, people, it's going to be a long one. First of all, let's take a look at army composition in CK3. This first part will be divided into 3 subsections which represent the 3 categories of units within the game. These 3 categories are as followed and located in the military tab. So we have levies, knights, and finally men-at-arms. Let's start off first of all with the levies. Levies make up the bulk of your fighting force and are fairly cheap to maintain when raised. They are a mix of different units that consist of peasant militias, ruffians, sellswords and destitute nobles that literally arm themselves with anything they can find. Even though they are made up of all these different categories of populations, levies are considered as a single unit type within the game. They are probably the weakest unit in CK3, but it is by combining them with the other 2 categories, so knights and men-at-arms, that makes for an efficient army. The amount of levies that you can muster depends on quite a few things. You gain levies from your personal domain. Each county you hold provides you with a set number of levies. This amount can increase or decrease depending on a variety of factors such as buildings, county control, county development, and so on. You also gain levies through your vassals who, due to the feudal contract with you, they must provide you with some of their levies. Next, on top of these amounts are applied some modifiers. Your ruler's martial stat can increase or decrease the amount of levies from your holdings. A ruler with a high martial stat will see a percentage increase to his levies from his personal domain. The opposite is however possible if your ruler has a really bad martial stat. Your marshal on your council, so not to confuse with the martial stat, can further increase your levy size depending on his martial ability if he has the organised levies focus active. The amount of levies that vassals provide can also fluctuate depending on their opinion of you, so higher opinion means more levies, as well as the amount that the feudal contract stipulates. You can easily modify the amount through the feudal contract. In order to modify the feudal contract, just go onto the Realm tab and find your vassals and click on the Modify Feudal Contract button. It is from here that you can change his feudal contract to provide you with more levies if you wish to do so. Up next we have the Knights of the Realm. These are men of noble birth that joined your armies to fight alongside the levies and men-at-arms. The number of knights available to you is limited by several factors, and you can increase this number by increasing your level of fame, unlocking the Kingsguard perk and the Gallant Military perk tree, among other things. Knights are extremely powerful, and they fight using a mechanic called prowess. The higher the prowess, the more damage they do in combat, and the more toughness they receive, toughness being the amount of damage they can take before becoming a casualty. To put this into context, a levy does 10 damage and has 10 toughness. A knight has 100 damage and 10 toughness per prowess point, so imagine a knight with 23 prowess, but more on damage and toughness later. Knights also have something called knight effectiveness, which determines how well they fight in battle. They have a base effectiveness of 100, but that can actually go up to a maximum of 200% with the help of lifestyle perks and innovation, for example. If they hit 200% effectiveness, their prowess is doubled. Imagine that, it's like frickin' knights on steroids. It's important to remember that you can manage your knights. What I mean by that is that you can determine who you would like to be a knight or not. If you're running out of competent knights, you can also invite some to the court, but remember it costs gold to recruit them, and the gold cost increase the higher the knight's prowess. Now moving on to the final unit type, that of men-at-arms. These are in a way your professional soldiers, your standing army if you wish, since you have to pay them a fraction of their maintenance even if they are not raised. However, once you raise them for war, you pay the full amount in maintenance, which is quite expensive, so make sure you can afford them. They also cost a lump sum to create, and quite a hefty sum at that. There are many types of men-at-arms, and these can vary depending on your culture, but they all are way more efficient than your levies, which is why you must supplement your levies with men-at-arms as well as knights. Each men-at-arms unit, bar siege engines, are effective against other men-at-arm types, with each unit being at an advantage or disadvantage in certain terrain types. So choose wisely depending on the terrain and, of course, the enemy's composition. I briefly mentioned siege engines, so onagers, mangonels, trebuchets and bombards. Each siege engine is unlocked at a different era. These men-at-arms troops help with sieges, more precisely siege progress. They effectively help speed up the rate at which you can occupy a castle. However, it is important to check up to what fort level they are effective at, so keep an eye out on that. Before we move on to the second part of the video, which is unit attributes, it's important to know that you can upgrade your men-at-arms regiments up to a maximum of 3 levels. Each level you upgrade increases the amount of men-at-arms in the regiment. All this while increasing maintenance costs, so a balancing act is key here. Make sure you have the funds. But how many men-at-arms regiments may I have, might you ask? Well, that information is located just above the Create Men-at-Arms Regiment, so be selective in what you want to create. But don't fret if you get the composition wrong, you can always dismantle a regiment and create another. The amount of regiments you can create depends on the rank of your title, so an emperor can have more men-at-arms regiments than a king more than a duke more than a count. Innovations can also increase your men-at-arms limit. So by combining these 3 categories of units, so levies with powerful knights and some strong men-at-arms regiments, you should have an army that has a lot of quality. This quality is reflected in-game by the Army Quality Indicator located at the top right-hand side of the screen. The higher the quality of the army, the more that army will punch above its weight. An army with significant less numbers than its adversary, but has a significantly higher quality rating to it, can be a formidable foe, so keep that in mind when engaging an enemy. Always check army quality. Now that we have analysed the 3 main unit types present in the game, let's move on to the different unit stats. These stats are crucial to understand before we can comprehend how battles work in CK3. But before we start this section, it's important to note that this only applies to levies and men-at-arms. Knights do not have the stats that I'm about to talk about. The stats that I'm going to talk about number 4. So we have damage, toughness, pursuit, and screen. The first one determines how many casualties the unit can inflict upon an enemy in battle. Toughness is pretty much defense. In essence, it's how much damage a unit can take in battle before dying. For example, it would take 2 units of levies to kill a unit of light footmen if both unit types were fighting without any bonuses at all. This is because a light footman has 16 toughness, which means 1 levy with 10 attack would not be enough to take down a single unit of light footmen. There would have to be 2, meaning that in a direct fight between the same amount of levies and light footmen, with no positive or negative modifiers applied, the light footman with 10 damage and 16 toughness could take out 2 levies with only 10 damage and 10 toughness before being killed. I hope all that made sense. Up next we have Pursuit, that increases the amount of casualties you can inflict in the aftermath of a battle, which is called the Pursuit phase, but more on that later. The higher the combined pursuit value of your army, the more fatal casualties you will inflict during the enemy's retreat phase. Finally, we have the Screen stat, which is a form of counter to the Pursuit stat. It effectively reduces the amount of casualties your routed troops take in the aftermath of a battle. The higher the combined screen value of your army, so the total screen value of all your troops added together, the less troops you will lose when you are routed. As stated earlier concerning men-at-arms regiments, each regiment type is effective or less effective depending on the terrain it is fighting on. When the said regiment is fighting on terrain it is effective in, the regiment will receive an increase to 1 or more of the 4 stats depending on the regiment. On the contrary, if the regiment is fighting on unfavourable terrain, it will take a negative penalty to 1 or more of the same 4 stats. So be careful what men-at-arms regiments you employ before going into battle. Another useful piece of information is that men-at-arms regiments can counter each other. Some regiment types counter another type, and when that regiment is countered, its battle effectiveness is reduced. Now that we have successfully looked at different unit types, their strengths and weaknesses, as well as the 4 major stats that units possess, let's have a look how battles are played out in CK3. Now, bear with me people, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. The first thing we need to understand is how battles work, more precisely what the battle phases are. So I will begin doing a kind of theory thing here where I'll explain each battle phase, and I shall follow this up afterwards with an example battle to show you how this all works. First of all, when armies meet in battle we have the manoeuvre phase. It is in this phase that the advantage or disadvantage is established between the 2 sides depending on a variety of factors such as the commander's martial ability, terrain type, and so on. Once the manoeuvre phase is over, we enter the early battle phase, which is a series of skirmishes. It is in this phase that dice rolls come into play, where your advantage is increased or decreased depending on your commanders and the opposing commander's dice rolls. Each dice roll is added to each commander's advantage, then the difference being calculated again, giving you either the advantage or disadvantage, thus increasing damage done or received. If the whole army is destroyed by this phase, then the battle ends. If not, we move on to the next phase, which is the late battle phase. This is where armies may decide to retreat to fight another day, so they can save as many soldiers as they can. Before this battle phase, you cannot retreat. If they decide to stay, then the battle continues. Then we enter the final phase called the Aftermath phase, where the winning side tries to kill as many of the routing soldiers as possible. This is where it could be useful, for example, to have some light cavalry men-at-arms units with high pursuit, so you can try and kill as many people as possible. Here, if you are on the losing side, you could possibly go for some men-at-arms units with a lot of screening, which would potentially protect you from the cavalry's pursuit. Now that the whole theory of battle is complete, I wanted to take this opportunity to show you an example of a battle, how it kind of folds out, what the different phases are, and how everything really is calculated. I've chosen to show just a quick small battle here, nothing too complicated. I didn't want to add men-at-arms to overcomplicate things, so I've gone for a little battle as the Earl or the Petty King of Munster going against the County of Desmond here. So as you can see, we are in the battle here, and I'm going to kind of go over what's happening and what the different phases are. So as you can see here, we are in the maneuver phase. So this is the very first phase, as stated before, where the troops are preparing for battle. This phase is really important because it determines the advantage, if you have any, or your disadvantage for the battle. And this is really, really important. It's you'll see why in a little while. So basically what happens is, depending on a variety of factors, you have either a positive number, which is your advantage, which means you deal more damage, or a negative number, which is your disadvantage, which means you receive more damage. So how is this calculated? Well, what happens is, so for the attacker, which is us, what happens is it takes our commander advantage. Okay, so our commander advantage is our martial skill and our perks. So as you can see, we have 20 martial skill plus leading our own soldiers because we are the ruler of the nation. And since we're leading our own men, it gives us some more advantage. And we have the perk Never Back Down, which gives us +5 extra advantage, which tops it up to about 30. And then what happens is, to this number here, you subtract the defender's advantage. So as you can see, his advantage here is +10 for his martial skill. But now you're going to be wondering, well, 30 minus 10 makes 20, not 15. Well, what you need to do, if you are the defender, you need to take into account the terrain. Now, as you can see here, it is wetlands, which means the defender gains a +5 advantage. And just hover your mouse cursor over the overall advantage in the middle here, and you'll see that we have our advantage due to our commander advantage, which is 30, and you'll see the enemy advantage is, so you've got the commander advantage of +10, due to his martial ability, which was showcased here by hovering your mouse cursor over the commander advantage, and then you also add +5 for the wetlands. So in essence, he has +15. So this very first phase of the battle, so if you are attacker, your advantage is comprised of your martial ability plus the different perks that you have that increases your commander advantage. And if you are the defender, it takes into account the defender's commander advantage and the terrain in which you are defending in. Note that the bonuses for terrain is only applicable to the defenders. The attackers do not get any terrain advantage. So as you can see here, we have 30, which is our overall advantage, minus 15, which is their overall advantage due to their commander and the terrain that they're defending in, and it gives us a total of 15 advantage in our favour. In our favour, it's green, it's all nice and rosy, which means our damage is increased by 30%. If it was red, it would mean we would be at a disadvantage, and we would receive, well, the enemy would do 30% more damage to us. Now we've established this very important number of advantage at the beginning of the battle, let's go forward and see what actually happens. So let's advance here. Now we've entered the second phase of battle, which is the early battle phase, okay? And this is the really, really important phase because it's where dice roll actually come into the equation here. During this early battle phase, you cannot retreat. You have to stay and fight. You can only retreat after the early battle phase and when you enter the late battle phase. So here it's in 12 days' time. If you defeat an enemy army in this battle phase, okay, or if our army is defeated in this battle phase, then it is a total stack wipe. You just rout the whole army and you stack wipe them. So it's how you stack wipe in game. If you want to stack wipe here, you need to beat them in the early battle phase. So let's keep moving forward here and advance. And now you can see the very first dice roll has come into play. As you can see, we've rolled a 10. It's located by the number here, and this guy's rolled a 7. What does this do? Well, as you can see, the advantage number has changed. Now, how has this changed and what's happened? Well, basically what it's done is taken the fixed advantage that was determined during the deployment phase, or the maneuver phase if you wish. So ours was 30 and the other guy's was 15. And what it's done to this fixed number, so that early advantage determined in the maneuver phase never changes. What happens when you roll the dice is that the number you roll gets added to that overall advantage determined in the maneuver phase. So as you can see, we rolled a 10, so 30 plus the battle roll of 10, so that's a dice roll, makes 40, and the opposing guy rolled a 7, so that is 15 plus 7 makes 22. And then the same principle is applied. We take our overall advantage, which is now 40 thanks to the dice roll, and you subtract the advantage that the enemy has, which is increased thanks to their dice roll, which is 22, so 40 minus 22 equals plus 18. And here you can see we are still in the advantage here. We have 18 in our favour, which means our damage is still increased, and this time a little bit more by 36%. Now if we keep rolling, keep going on here, you can see troops are dying, troops are fleeing. As you can see under here, you can see your routed casualties, so these are the ones that are running away, and you can see he's got routed casualties here, 128. They're not killed, routed, I'm pretty sure that's that. Most casualties are actually routed casualties and not dead or badly wounded, okay? These are not fatal casualties, these are the ones that are fleeing. It's very important to differentiate between fatal casualties and routed casualties, okay? So now we have entered another battle phase, and you see the dice roll has changed, so we've rolled a 5, he's rolled a 2. So if I go over onto the advantage here, it's still 18 in our favour. So as you can see on our base advantage, which was determined by the maneuver phase, which was 30, we've added the 5 of the dice roll, which makes it 35. Same applies to the opposing character, so now with the dice roll, it's up from 15 to 17, and again, so we do 35 minus their advantage 17, which makes plus 18, and we're still doing 36% extra damage. So let's keep going in the fight here, and again, another dice roll, so we've now rolled a 1, he's rolled a way better 5, and so our advantage has slowly dwindled here, not too much, but as you can see, so 30 plus 1, so 31, and this guy's got 15 plus 5, which is 20. And then we keep going, keep going, keep going. Is there another dice roll yet? No, and there is another dice roll. So this guy's rolled a 2, we've rolled a 0. But then it is still plus 13 in our favour. Again, we stay now at 30 because we've rolled a 0, so we only take our commander advantage and we don't add anything on it because we've rolled a 0. And this guy adds 2 onto his commander advantage, so 15 plus 2, 17. We still have plus 13 advantage, which means our damage is still increased by 26%. And now we have entered what we call the third phase, which is a late battle phase. So now the enemy can choose to retreat if he wants to. So he can just basically select his army, click anywhere, and he can retreat, thus limiting the amount of casualties. And now we've gone into this late battle phase, the opportunity to stack wipe has gone. You can only stack wipe in the early battle phase. But then in this battle phase, the same principle applies. Dice rolls happen, and there we go. Now he's got no men left because his numbers were dwindling. As soon as that hits 0, that means he's got no more soldiers left fighting. And then the fourth, and final phase comes into play, which is the aftermath phase, which the winner of the battle then pursues the retreating enemies and tries to kill as many of the men as possible. So I'll just advance this a little bit here. We're still pursuing, and it's finished. So now if we go to the battle overlay, if you win, you should get a green round bubble up here. If you lose, it's a red bubble, and you can see the details of the battle. So you can see we deployed an initial 501 men. We lost 57, and we have 444 survivors. This guy lost 219 men, so he basically lost, 4 times the amount that we did. He started off with more numbers than we did, 549, but since we had a better commander, and we pretty much bashed him, so he has 330 remaining. You can see the detail if you want. You can see who killed what. You can see how many men you killed in the pursuit phase. You can see our knights killed 17 of their men in the pursuit phase, and our levies actually killed 4 in the pursuit phase. So you add 17-4, so it's a total. We killed levies, we killed 21 of his levies, 17 and the 4 there. You can see how many you killed in the main phase as well. You can see how engaging you were in the main phase, which is the early battle phase, and the late battle phase. So that's it. So I hope you understood how battles work here. So, which is why it's important, really. Your commander is increasingly important, and the maneuver phase, so the very first phase of the battle, is probably one of the most crucial ones, because the higher the advantage you can get, the bigger the chance you have of winning the battle, because that figure you get in the maneuver phase, or that advantage figure in the maneuver phase, is a fixed constant, and the only way that is going to change afterwards is with dice rolls. So I hope that cleared things up with battle. I hope I wasn't overly complicated. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. Now, if you guys want to go deeper, you can experiment with adding men-at-arms, and it can be incredibly helpful because they can help you cause more damage. They could also screen a retreat, making you lose less men in the pursuit phase if you've lost, and you can also slay more soldiers in the pursuit phase if you get light horsemen, for example, because they have a lot of pursuit, and it would enable you to kill more soldiers in that phase. So experiment a little bit with men-at-arms, and you can see the differences they make. I chose not to showcase that here because it would just add a load of extra complicated stuff on top, and I didn't want to make things too difficult. But anyway, that's all I have time for here in what was an incredibly difficult video for me to make. I tried to make it as less complicated as possible, and I really hope it helped you guys understand the military aspect of the game a little bit better. If by any chance it did, please hit that like button down below, share the video, comment, and of course subscribe if you haven't yet. It really does help me out. Anyway, with that all said and done, thanks again for being here, people, and I'll hopefully catch you all in the next one. Bye for now.